Not every tractor turned out the way the brochure promised. Some burned oil, some burned cash, and some left farmers wondering how the factory ever signed off on them. In this video, we're digging into 11 machines that were built to help, but became famous for letting people down. And wait till you hear about the tractors in the last 3 spots. Even loyal fans were shocked. It's rare to find a John Deere that even loyal fans warn others to avoid. But the 2010? That's the one they mention first, and sometimes the only one. Released in the early 1960s as part of Deere's New Generation series, the 2010 looked promising on paper. It had modern styling, a live PTO, and came in multiple configurations: row crop, utility, crawler, even an orchard version. But behind the bold redesign was an engineering mess, one that would haunt Deere's reputation for years. The core issue was the hydraulic system, overly complex and painfully unreliable. Mechanics called it a ticking time bomb with hoses. And when the system failed, which it often did, repairs were brutal. Accessing certain components meant splitting the tractor, literally, for a routine service. The engine wasn't much better. Early models suffered from poor oiling, leading to premature wear and noisy internals. Add in a transmission that didn't like to stay in gear, and you had a tractor that seemed determined to test your patience. Farmers who bought the 2010 expected progress. What they got felt like a step backward. One Iowa farmer famously parked his 2010 behind the barn and used it to prop up fencing wire. Said he got more use out of it that way. It was a rare misstep for John Deere, and one they've never really lived down. This was supposed to be Ford's big leap forward, a tractor that would take on the giants. Instead, the 6000 Commander became a masterclass in how not to launch a new machine. Introduced in the early 1960s, the Ford 6000 came with big promises. It was Ford's first factory-built tractor with a 6-cylinder engine, full power shift transmission, and an ambitious new look. Dealers called it futuristic. Farmers called it other things. The problems started almost immediately. The Select O-Speed transmission, meant to offer smooth shifting under load, turned out to be anything but. Jerky, unreliable, and prone to failure, it earned a reputation as one of the most finicky systems Ford ever produced. Many units had to be recalled. Some never made it back out of the shop. Then came engine issues, from overheating under load to oil leaks that stained more barns than fresh paint ever could. Parts were expensive, repairs were frequent, and confidence sank fast. To Ford's credit, they later improved the model and re-released it, but the damage had already been done. For many, the 6000 Commander was a $4,000 disappointment on 4 wheels, and proof that ambition without reliability is just an expensive lesson. On the surface, the Allis-Chalmers 440 looked like a powerhouse, big, boxy, and bold. The kind of tractor that made neighbors peek over the fence. But behind that brute strength was a machine that wore the Alice badge and borrowed all its problems from somewhere else. The 440 wasn't built by Allis-Chalmers at all. It was a rebadged Steiger, powered by a Cummins 555 V8 engine, and meant to compete in the growing 4-wheel drive market of the 1970s. But what buyers got was a mismatch of big horsepower and questionable dependability. The transmission, a 10-speed Spicer, was notoriously stiff and clunky. Hydraulic lines ran hot and leaked often. Steering under full load was more of a suggestion than a guarantee. And while the Cummins engine had a decent reputation on its own, the overall build quality and electrical gremlins of the 440 made farmers lose confidence fast. The 440 was an identity crisis on wheels, too loud for comfort, too thirsty for profit, and too unreliable to live up to its own shadow. It might have been born to compete with the big boys, but in the eyes of many farmers, it just couldn't carry the weight. The 1950s were full of big ideas, and the International Harvester 460 was one of them. But sometimes, big ideas get rushed, and rushed tractors don't tend to age well. Launched in 1958, the 460 was part of IH's new look lineup, a fresh start after the success of the Farmall series. On paper, it had potential. A newly designed 6-cylinder gas or diesel engine, updated sheet metal, and more horsepower than its predecessors. But under the hood, things weren't quite right. The rear end and final drive were severely underbuilt for the engine's output. IH had essentially taken components from earlier, smaller models and thrown them into a heavier, more powerful tractor. The result? Gears stripped, axles snapped, reliability vanished. Many farmers found themselves repairing major driveline parts far sooner than they ever expected. And it wasn't cheap. Worse, the narrow front-end design on some models made for sketchy stability on hilly terrain, adding insult to mechanical injury. As one Illinois farmer put it, "She looked sharp in the shed and fell apart in the field." The IH 460 was meant to lead a new generation. Instead, it became a cautionary tale of what happens when marketing outruns engineering. It had a sound that turned heads, a deep, throaty V8 growl that made farmers think they were sitting on raw muscle. But the Massey Ferguson 1155 was proof that noise doesn't equal reliability. Released in the 1960s, mid-1970s, the 1155 came packed with a Perkins 540 V8 diesel, pushing close to 140 horsepower. It was Massey's attempt to step into the big leagues of row crop power, and on paper, it looked ready. But under the stress of real farm work, the V8 showed its flaws. The engine ran hot, too hot. Some farmers even tried swapping out the V8 for inline sixes just to keep the chassis useful. The 1155 had style. It had sound. But in the end, it couldn't outrun its own weaknesses. It left behind more frustration than field. On paper, the Case IH 918-0 was a beast, a four-wheel drive monster built to move mountains. But in real life, it moved farmers to the repair shop more than the field. Released in the late 1980s, the 9180 was part of Case IH's push into the heavy-duty four-wheel drive market. It boasted a Cummins 855 engine, up to 335 horsepower, and an imposing look that made it feel unstoppable. But power means nothing without the parts to handle it, and that's where things fell apart. The driveline was the weak link. Shafts wore prematurely. U-joints failed. The articulation system caused headaches on rough terrain, and steering felt vague under load. Worse, the hydraulic system had a habit of leaking at the worst times, and replacements weren't cheap. Comfort wasn't a strength either. The KB was noisy, and the controls were scattered. It was a big machine that didn't always feel like it had a plan. The 9180 had the muscle to get things done, but without the backbone to back it up, all that power turned into a long list of regrets. The Oliver 1855 did both, often at the same time. Launched in the early 1970s, The 1855 was supposed to be Oliver's flagship, a powerful row-crop tractor with a turbocharged Waukesha 310 diesel engine, rated around 105 horsepower. It looked the part, sounded the part, and on a good day, it even worked the part. But good days were hard to come by. The problem was heat, and lots of it. The Waukesha engine simply couldn't handle the turbo boost under constant load. It was prone to cracked heads, warped pistons, and spun bearings. Oil temperatures ran high, and the oil cooler was barely up to the task. For many owners, it felt like the engine was fighting itself from day one. To make things worse, the oil pressure gauge wasn't reliable, so by the time a problem was noticed, the damage was usually done. The 1855 had potential, no doubt. But in the long run, it couldn't live up to its own promise. It's remembered today less for what it did, and more for what it should have done. It was cheap, it was rugged, and it was just about everything American farmers didn't want. The Belarus 825, imported from the former Soviet Union in the 1980s and 90s, was built to survive Siberia. Unfortunately, it didn't translate well to Iowa. With around 80 horsepower and four-wheel drive as standard, it seemed like a bargain on the lot. But once it hit the field, that deal started to look expensive. The clutch was stiff, the controls were awkward, and the gear shifting felt like wrestling a bear, blindfolded. The cab layout ignored basic ergonomics, and the wiring system looked like it had been installed by a man late for lunch. Even basic service tasks felt like punishment. Parts were hard to find. Dealer support? Practically non-existent in many regions. And the owner's manual? Let's just say, something got lost in translation. The Belarus 825 wasn't all bad. In the right hands, it could work. But for most American farmers, it became a lesson in why rugged and reliable aren't the same thing. It's one thing to buy a tractor. It's another to wonder if the company that made it still exists by the time it breaks down. The Long 610 was a budget-friendly import, built in Eastern Europe and sold under the Long name in the US during the 1970s and 80s. At first glance, it looked like a solid workhorse. Simple diesel engine, basic mechanics, no fancy electronics. And for small farms on a tight budget, it seemed like the right call. But the problem started where it mattered most: support and service. Parts were hard to find. Manuals were vague, and calling a dealer often meant finding out they had no idea what you were talking about. Mechanically, the tractor was rough. It had a reputation for weak hydraulics, noisy transmission, and build quality that varied wildly from unit to unit. Some ran fine, others ran until they didn't. One Alabama farmer said, "It was the cheapest thing on the lot. Now I know why." The Long 610 wasn't the worst tractor ever built, but it might be one of the most forgettable. And in farming, forgettable is just another word for regrettable. It came with a promise: affordable power, simple mechanics, and global support. But for many American farmers, the Mahindra 4110 became a masterclass in unmet expectations. Imported in the early 2000s as part of Mahindra's push into the US compact utility market, the 4110 looked great on paper. It had four-wheel drive, a 41 horsepower diesel, and a price that undercut the competition. But once the machines hit the field, reality set in. The PTO system was inconsistent, often failing under moderate loads. Cold starts were a nightmare, especially in northern climates. And the electrical system, particularly the ignition and wiring harness, became infamous for random failures. Some machines ran beautifully for months, until they didn't start the next morning. Parts availability was hit or miss, and while some dealers were responsive, many customers were left chasing down answers, or worse, improvising their own. The Mahindra 4110 didn't fail because it lacked potential. It failed because too many farmers were left fixing problems they didn't sign up for. Some tractors were ahead of their time. The Deutz DX160 was just in the wrong place at the wrong time and paid the price. Introduced in the 1980s, the DX160 was a high-tech German import with around 160 horsepower, full-frame construction, an air-cooled engine, and more buttons than some pickup trucks. In Europe, it earned respect. In America, it earned confusion and complaints. The air-cooled engine, while innovative, struggled in dusty Midwest environments. Electronics were complex for the era, and when something failed, few local mechanics had the tools or the training to fix it. Parts were expensive, manuals weren't always in English, and even small repairs turned into long, costly projects. Many owners admired the look. Fewer enjoyed the ownership. The Deutz DX160 wasn't a bad tractor by design, just a bad fit for the market it was sold in. And for a machine that promised precision, it delivered far too much frustration. Tractors aren't just machines. They're part of the farm, part of the work, and sometimes part of the family. So when one lets you down, it's not just frustrating, it's personal. The models in this list weren't hated because they were underpowered or outdated. They were hated because they promised something they couldn't deliver, whether that was reliability, value, or just a little peace of mind. And that's the part farmers never forget. But now it's your turn. Which tractor from the list do you think deserved the hate? Or maybe which one didn't? Let us know in the comments. Because chances are, someone else out there had the exact same story. And if you're someone who values real machines, real history, and real farming stories, go ahead and subscribe.